Hello everybody, this is the grinder introduction. So we're going to go over hand grinders in this video. There's a couple things that we do with hand grinders. We can cut. It's a very thin disc for cutting. We don't want to remove a ton of material, we just want to separate the material. So we use a thin disc. This is what one of those discs look like. Super thin. Okay, we can remove metal, so grind down, think about a lawnmower blade or a sword would be the same effect. It's got a big edge to it. If we're removing a lot of material, we're going to use a grinder disc. So this is just a regular grinding disc. It's pretty thick, okay? It has cloth basically woven throughout it, so it's not just a hard disc. It's got a skeleton in one sense on the inside of this one. Along those same lines, we can also remove metal with a sandpaper disc. So you can see here, this has a bunch of sandpaper laid on edge, and that's what this looks like. So this is much more gentle, and it does not remove nearly as much metal as what the grinder disc would do, but it does remove metal. It can shine things up nicely and smooth them out like sandpaper does for wood if we were over in the wood shop. Okay, and then there's one more grinder wheel that we use. It is a wheel, it's not a disc like these were. This is a wire wheel, and there's a couple different forms of this. Some of them have the wires coming straight out the edge. The ones that we have in here are generally in a cup shape like this, and they're twisted together in that pattern, how you see there. This just seems to work better for our applications in here. So this does a good job of removing the dross or the burrs or the boogers on the back side of something that you plasma cut. So this is a great application for that. It's not going to remove metal like the other two discs, or it's not going to cut like the cutting disc. It is going to give kind of a polishing effect to it. This one has a big chance of throwing wires across the room, which is like if you took needles and started throwing them at people. That's what this does. So that covers the 4 different types of discs that we have in here for wheels. For the hand grinder, this is a hand grinder. It's got no disc on it. It's just got the nut. Okay. There are 2 pieces that go on every single grinder. You have this washer, okay, it kind of holds things in place, and then you have the nut that goes on top of this. That nut will get lost if you set it down when you're changing things out. You don't have to change out a disc. You can ask for help or ask a welding 2 student, or help welding 3 also. And then we have the wrench that helps you change that out. Some of the nuts on that don't take that wrench, or they don't have the holes for the wrench, so you use channel locks. You get them to the right size. This is adjustable channel locks right here. You can go wide or narrow, so you get it to the right size, and that's how you get that nut loosened, and then you put it back on with. For the grinder, as I asked some of our returning students, welding 3 students, I asked them, what would you have me tell the new students coming in about how to use a grinder? What are the most important things after I go over what I just went over? And they said, definitely need to make sure that they clamp things down. So at the grinder station or at the welding booths, you can use the hand grinders here, okay, at the grinder station, and there's a green on switch and a red off switch right there for that, so make sure that's running so it keeps the dust out of the air. And if you're over here, it needs to be at, you need to be directing all the shavings, the grinding dust, into the exhaust, so that way we don't have to breathe that in. Side note there. They said clamp things down. It's hard to use these. This is probably the most difficult tool to use in the entire shop, and it's not super difficult, but it causes the most frustration out of everything in this shop. This tool does. So you need to figure out how to use this, and you need to clamp your metal down. So you can do that in a couple different ways. You can see we have a vise here, so you can clamp things down in that, but usually that's not good unless you have an object. So if we're just grinding on a piece of metal on this table, you're going to clamp it on the edge right here. You're going to put it on the edge. Like, let's say I needed to bevel the edge of this, so make it like a lawnmower blade. We're not aiming for sharp, but we're putting that same bevel or ledge on it. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to get this tight, okay? So just tight. I don't crank this tight, but I'm going to loosely put it over it, and then I'm going to turn this to where it's tight, and then I'm going to take it off, and I'll do this where you can see it. I'm going to go righty-tighty another quarter turn. Then I'm going to come over here, and I'm going to put this back down, and that had resistance to it. I had to squish that on there. Then I can take the metal, and it's moving the whole table, so I know this is connected to the table. So this is not going to move, okay? I know I'm good. If you need to, use 2 of those. But that is the procedure. You get it to where it's tight, and you can't tighten the back anymore, and then you take it off, and you go another quarter turn. That's probably the biggest thing with all of this, with getting it set up and going. Another thing they wanted me to tell you, because it was a very big deal to them, because they've had sparks shot at them continuously, and they don't like it from other students. So they said, make sure that they're aiming their sparks in a proper place. Make sure that they're shooting the sparks into a proper place. So with the grinder, how do you know where the sparks are going to go? As you look at every single grinder, there is an arrow. It says it's going to spin in that direction. So you can take it when it's not plugged in. Please don't do this while it's plugged in. So with it unplugged, okay, make sure it's unplugged, you can spin it and you can go, okay, if it's spinning this way, sparks are going to go the direction that it's throwing it. Think of a car when it burns out, or truck. It's burning out, it's throwing the gravel and all the pieces of rubber coming off of it, it's throwing it in the direction that it's spinning. Same thing here, it's going to throw it in the direction it's spinning. So when you clamp something down, and I aim like this, it's spinning like this, okay, it's throwing the sparks this way. They told me they didn't like that. They didn't like getting hit with sparks. They didn't like here getting hit with sparks over there. Like somebody grinding here will throw sparks all the way over at the lockers, and you can hear it pinging off of the lockers. They don't like that. They want you, I want you, to turn like this and throw the sparks this way, because the fans on this table will actually, and this wall behind it here, it actually captures it, traps it, and sucks it back down into here. So it saves us all from getting hit. When you're using one of the booths to use the grinder in, the same protections are back there. It sucks the dust in, all of the yellow curtains, kind of controls the dust, controls the sparks, controls the flying fire. Okay? So that's important no matter what disc you're using. Other things they wanted me to make sure that you knew, because they didn't want to get their arm chopped off, they want to make sure that you get this to come to a full stop. So there's a button on every single one of these grinders that turns this on. And the button can lock also, side note. Don't recommend doing that in here. We don't have a continuous operation where you need to lock it in. If you find an operation where that'd be helpful, just make sure you're aware of that being locked in. So 2 hands, because 2 hands is safe. This thing likes to, it'll catch and throw itself into you, and then, you know, a spinning wheel of death coming flying at you. That's not a good thing. So you're going to catch a blade, it's going to cut your arm, you're going to bleed out. We're going to have an ambulance backed up to the back door here picking you up and bringing you to the hospital really quick to get you a couple pints of blood. We don't want that. we also don't want, this is why they mentioned it, we don't want you hurting somebody else. It's more likely you're going to hurt somebody else than it is you're going to hurt yourself, because there's so many of us in a shop. There's a lot of older farmer guys or shop guys that they'll use a grinder one-handed and be doing their thing. One, that's not a great idea for a lot of reasons, but we can talk about that later. But in here, that is especially dangerous, because if I'm grinding here and I go to move something, wheels still spinning, and somebody just happens to be walking by me because they're looking over here, they're like, I'm on a mission, I'm gonna go pick up my Sharpie so that way I can make the marks and do whatever, and I'm doing this, and then I go like this. I don't see them coming, they don't see me doing what I'm doing, and then all of a sudden you've just cut them across the arm or the belly or something, and then they're getting in the ambulance. You feel terrible, and it all goes downhill from there. So 2 hands always, and that leads me to the next thing, is get it to come to a full stop, not a slow down. Get it to come to a full stop. So what I mean by that is, while you're grinding, okay, so you're doing this kind of motion, all the sparks are going this way. If I turn it on right now, you won't be able to hear me, so I'm not going to do that. I'm grinding, and then I'm like, okay, I'm done. I'm not just going to stop and turn it off. I want it to come to a full stop before I leave contact with the metal that I'm working on, okay? So I'm going to go from on to now it's off, but I'm still grinding, but it's off. So what's happening to the blade is it's going from really, really fast, like 2,000 RPMs, I believe is what these are rated at. I could be wrong, they might be faster, to it's gonna go down to nothing pretty quickly. Make sure that comes to a complete stop, because then once you turn, and if somebody's coming this way and you're turning this way and they don't see you and you bump into them, they bumped into you, whatever happens, it's no big deal because it was off, and we don't have bloodshed, we don't have cut tendons, cut bones, anything like that. Nothing unpleasant. So that's 2 hands. Make sure it gets to a stop. Don't push hard. And another thing that they said was you need to check the condition of your disc. The disc, because it's spinning so fast, it's not exploding, but it's just shrapnel everywhere, because maybe it was damaged. So don't push hard, okay? Don't hit anything with the disc or with the grinder, because it's going to shatter, it's going to weaken it, and then when it's spinning fast, it's going to basically explode and go everywhere. So with that, checking the condition of the disc with a cutting disc, somebody used it down to this size. That's not okay. That's not using our equipment well and taking care of it. Were we too lazy to change it? Were we too embarrassed to ask for help to change it when we found it like this, or we used it down to this? Not good. This is not good. If the disc, so this is a cutting disc, you can't push on it. Okay, so you can't push down on it. It has to be slice. So this one doesn't have any strength. You can think about how thin it is. It's not strong. So if you push on it like a grinder disc, you're trying to grind the edge away, it's not going to be good. It's going to break and it's going to go flying everywhere. The grinders by far are the most dangerous tool that we have in the shop. Moving on to the next one, the grinder disc. So this one has been used on aluminum. There's aluminum all through it. And what you can see, you can kind of see the cloth that's in there. This grinder disc is still okay. It's not in a real bad way yet. There are some that have been used way too much. So we have brand new, we have used, but you could probably still use that a little bit more, not much. And then you have way too used. So here's new, there's way too used. There's a significant size difference in that. That's too small. It's getting too close to that center nut that's holding everything together. So that's not good. On the sandpaper disc, you got to use these a certain way. And so here's a good one, and then here's a not good one. Right here, you can see where it's starting to get into the backside, which is what it's glued to. Like they're trying to sand something smooth, but they're using something that's not going to give them a smooth surface. This backside is not designed to sand anything, and yet they're using it like that. There's barely any sandpaper here. What are you trying to do to your product? So with this one, and this grinder disc, like the cutting disc, you got to use different. You can't just push on it. This one, because the angle of the sandpaper, you really want to, as you're using it, you want to try to keep it as flat as possible, because that's how the sandpaper is going to come in contact with the metal. If you do it like this, like you're not, the sand, think of it like that, the sand that's on the bottom of this, that's glued to the paper, is not going to come in contact with the metal. If I'm trying to shine this up, that's not going to work. This is going to work. Keep it as flat as you can. Again, there's a nut right here, so you can't keep it flat, but it's got to be real close to it to do the job that this is meant to do. So keep that in mind. Everything has a purpose. And then for this guy, the cone wire brush, you can't use it like that. It's got to be slightly angled, just like the sandpaper, in order to get as much of the wire to come into contact with it as possible. This one really likes to throw the grinder. And what I mean by that is it'll catch the edge, so it's spinning like this. It's going to catch the edge and it's going to throw your grinder, and it's going to mess with you, because you're going to be like, no, I'm trying to smooth this. Why does it keep throwing? Well, you're doing it wrong. Okay, so it's spinning in a certain direction. So when you get to the metal, spin it to where it spins off the metal. Okay, so that means that you need to change the angle, and then you probably need to stop this, get this to come to a full stop, and then you move your metal, and then you can keep on going. This, you can't grind everything all flat and smooth. Like, that's not what it's here for. This removes the boogers off the back of anything that you plasma cut. It can shine things, but that's it. And you have to shine things in a certain way, just like the sandpaper. You can't hit this edge with the sandpaper. You're just going to break all the sandpaper off, and then you got to change a disc, and you got to change a disc. And that's expensive, so don't do that. But it's not going to be effective or quick either. So make sure that you're sanding where it's throwing it off the metal. That is how to go about using and choosing any of the grinders, hand grinders that we have. We have two organizers. We have the grinder disc right up here. You can use the grinders at this station or at one of the middle 10 welding stations. Do not use these hand grinders at the far 5. It's where the TIG welders are. Don't use them over there. Too dusty, dirty. We're going to keep them at the middle 10 where it's dirty already, and over here where we can control the dust a lot better. Those are the locations where we are going to use grinders.